Are you like most sales and other professionals who want to grow their wealth faster than what they are currently doing through their company 401k, even with that company match, the stock market, or just plain saving money? Would you sleep better at night if you had the financial freedom to be job optional in just 3 to 5 years through investing in real assets? Maybe you don't want to stop working, but wouldn't it be cool if you could retire a decade earlier than most? And do the traveling you and your family have planned for years while you're still young and can enjoy it? Let's face it, most busy professionals don't have the time or desire to take on more work outside of their W-2 to grow their wealth. On The Wealth Flow, each week we share the stories, the investments, and take a deep dive into the various asset classes that can deliver that accelerated growth to your portfolio passively. That's right. No extra work for you. Instead, we'll put your money to work. Learn what the 95% aren't talking about and join the top 5% of earners today on The Wealth Flow.
All right, welcome to The Wealth Flow. My guest today is Jon Hilley. Jon started his career at Goldman Sachs, and 3 years ago, he founded a 1031 specialist, a qualified intermediary that facilitates 1031 exchanges for real estate investors across the country. They are growing rapidly and are among the top 10 firms in the industry. I am looking forward to this, Jon. Thanks for being a guest on The Wealth Flow, and I can't wait to dive into 1031 exchange with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Keith. Good to be here.
Yeah. I love to always start with really your background, really going way back. I like to find out a little bit about everybody I'm talking with, where you grew up and what eventually led you to be in the business of the 1031 exchange.
Let's do it. Okay. So hometown is what used to be a little town in Florida called Jupiter, and now known as like the golfing mecca of the country almost. It's where a lot of the golfers have homes. And so when I grew up there, it was there was still some dirt roads, and now it's very different. But my folks are still there. My wife's parents are in town, and it's a really wonderful place. So I grew up there. Went to University of Florida for college. Spent 4 years there, did a little bit of study abroad in Paris. But afterwards, I got a job at Goldman Sachs, specifically in their Miami office. And so I lived in Miami and South Beach for the next 20 years. And about 4 years ago, moved to Denver. So that's where we are now. That sort of 24-year sort of phase or history of work, I really kind of chop up into 3 different phases. I think some people are really strategic about their lives and their career and sort of draw a line at where they want to be at 60 and go backwards and work from there. Mine is far from that. It's more of a meandering experience. So the first 10 years of my career spent as an investor. So I started at Goldman, did the 3 levels of the CFA program, and then went to work at a buy-side hedge fund, long-short hedge fund at HIG Capital. And so did that. My mentor at Goldman left and started a private family office. So then I went there after a few years at HIG. And we were really unconstrained about what we could invest in. So we were investing across geographies, asset classes, up and down the capital structure. And because we were unconstrained, one of the things we started looking at early were cannabis companies, like circa 2013. And so we made an investment, and then we started looking more and more at this. And I just said to myself, look, I spent 10 years as an investor. It'd be really interesting to spend the next phase as an operator. And so sort of left the investing side, became the CFO of some of these cannabis companies, had a couple of successful exits. And the most recent one and the last one was a firm out of Denver, which sort of catalyzed the move out here, called Mile High Labs. And Mile High Labs is still operational today. But was the largest extractor of industrial hemp into CBD and other derivatives in the world. So that was a really interesting journey of, ups as high as we've got 4 bankers in the room writing the S1 and we're about to go public, and down in the middle of COVID. How do we get a white knight to save the company, basically? So I spent 10 years in that space, and after that period of time, we ended up selling that business to a private investor, and spent a year as the CEO, and then that was it for me. And I just said to myself, boy, that was a weird experience for 10 years, and not doing that again. So I had some time off to sort of evaluate what was next, and started working with a guy I know in the hedge fund space for many years. We were friends, and started working on this different and bigger idea inside of real estate. So if you're familiar with DSTs, Delaware Statutory Trusts, these products have gone from really 0% of the market. A regulatory shift allowed this product in to be 1031able, meaning it's an asset you can buy at a 1031 exchange, and it is in short, it's a securitized piece of real estate. Okay, so they'll take a building or a land lease or something large, chop it up into many pieces, and sell fractional ownership to DST investors. Okay. So we started looking at this product because it's gone from 0% of the market to something like 15% of the market inside of 10 years. I mean, just like a cannon shot of growth. But there are some sort of fundamental structural issues with those products. And so we started kicking around this idea inside of that space of how do we do something different, and spent about 6 months researching it, decided, look, this idea works. It's a great idea, but it's probably going to take 5 years to build. It's probably going to cost $50 million to build it. And I just did that with my last firm. And I said, I'm not doing that. But part of that exploration sort of turned this light into this really small niche inside of real estate called qualified intermediaries. And so my conclusion was, I'm not doing this big thing, but this little thing down here is really interesting. And the more I dug into it, both the market structure, the dynamics, who the players are, the more convinced I became that this is a real opportunity to pursue. And so about 3 years ago, we really started kicking off the efforts, and 2.5 years ago, we kind of flipped the lights on and went live. And this has been an interesting one for me so far because, and the story is yet to be told fully, but I've researched, between Jeff and I, who's my partner, we've researched, I don't know, thousands of companies and modeled thousands of businesses in our life. Not one hits your model. Not one. Okay. It just doesn't work that way. But this one, we self-funded this to get it going. And so, as an intellectually honest exercise, I sort of built this model and this presentation to myself, like, hey, do I really want to do this? Okay. And, true to that model, we have basically hit every single number. Like it's been the only business I've ever looked at, that I also fully control, right, as the owner. But it has really, what we designed and set out to do, we have absolutely executed on it. So I just find that to be sort of this interesting storyline in all of this of, investor and operator, it invested in a bunch of different stuff, but as much as you try, you just don't hit the numbers. But in this one, we're just sort of bang on with where we thought growth was going to be and everything else. So it's been a fun ride. I think, as you mentioned, we're one of the top 10 largest QIs in the country already, and I think there's specific reasons for that. Happy to talk more about it, but that's the long story.
Yeah, very interesting background, for sure. So, tell me a little bit, going back to maybe some of the cannabis and kind of your experience there. You said, did you say that you did exit a few of those companies, or So you had a lot of success out there, and so did that business change as things legalized, or were the margins still there? Or tell me a little bit about what you learned, I guess, maybe just, kind of I know that's not what we're here to talk about, but I'm just curious, somebody that actually, was in that industry for quite some time, what did you find with it?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, and if I could shake myself 15 years ago and say, you're not paying enough attention to this, or you are, but you're not thinking about it the right way, I would have told my younger self that. Okay. But the big bet that everyone has made in the cannabis market, whether you were on the federally legal side, like Mile High Labs was, or you were on the federally illegal side, which is, the THC businesses that exist, everyone made this bet that the regulatory change was coming and it was imminent. And the stories that were told around where this market was going to be from a consumer perspective, from a distribution perspective, from a market size and TAM perspective, those stories were all built off of largely this idea that regulatory change was coming. And so writ large across the industry, you were able at the time to raise, there was a ton of FOMO going on out there, and you were able to raise money quite easily. Okay. It's probably like being an AI company today. Okay.
Yeah.
And everyone was a believer that this is a real consumer driven market. The margins will work over time. There's heavy investment needed, but the regulatory change is here and it will lift everyone up. Well, that still hasn't happened. And you are faced with this question. I mean, there's still people operating in this business, but in aggregate, and there's been some winners, okay, for sure. We had some nice wins, but in aggregate, that industry has burned more capital than it's made. Right? It has made and destroyed way more capital than it is actually returned. And it's not even close. And even today, I don't know, it's possible on a cash basis, less than somewhere between 0 and 10% of companies are actually generating cash each quarter. So it's still a real challenge out there. And yeah, the biggest lesson, and one thing I will never do ever again, is try to make a bet on regulatory reform or regulatory change. I think you wait until the change has happened and then you exercise your expertise after that has happened, to capitalize on it.
Yeah, makes sense. And the regulatory change specifically that you're talking about is from the federal level. Is that kind of where the bet was, or?
Well, yeah, I mean, depending on what market you're in, if you're in the THC market, it's a bet that 280E is going to change. 280E is a section tax code which basically says if you're handling federally illicit goods, you cannot deduct the cost on your taxes. So there's some complicated equations that dispensaries are using to say this is the consulting period and this is the period of time we were touching the plant, and so you can deduct some. But the truth is, it is if you just wanted a shortcut, you get taxed on revenue basically, and it is so punitive that you can't generate $1 in cash flow. And so I think for that to change, you need a rescheduling, because right now cannabis, the THC kind, is still firmly in Schedule 1, even though there's been a lot of talk of change. But you would need a rescheduling and then 280E to shift and go away relative to that trade. So that's on the THC side. On the CBD and more the federally legal side, we bought a 443,000 square foot pharmaceutical building from Novartis. Okay. And that was this global platform with which we would be producing consumer packaged goods from. And we had a partnership with one of the world's largest ingredients companies that supplies all the big consumer packaged goods, the Nestle's, the Cokes of the world, right? So the play for us was these ingredients have really interesting consumer stories and applications. And when the big companies come in, they'll need a supplier that has done all the right things from a regulatory perspective. Well, the bet there is that the FDA would create a pathway for CBD to be allowable to be sold in retail. And to this day, they still have not created that pathway. There's a distinction that they make between drug and supplement. And if you're a drug, you can't also be a supplement. And that quagmire still exists today. So two different bets, same market in terms of cannabis, different sides of the market, but really two different regulatory bets you were making.
Wow, that's interesting. I'm so glad to kind of just hear what the story is. You know, I've got people that invest in that. I've got friends of mine that are in that business, and always just curious. I've just didn't have that insight.
Memories, Keith.
Well, let's shift over to some of the good ones. Another thing that you mentioned was the Delaware Statutory Trust. Can you maybe, for the audience and for myself, just explain that a little bit more about kind of how that works?
Yeah, so a sponsor, and there's some big ones. Cantor Fitzgerald is one of the biggest ones, but they will purchase an asset. They will then create a legal structure around it that allows that asset to be sold in little pieces to investors. Now, it's a piece of commercial real estate, but it actually can't be sold through the commercial real estate channel. It is technically considered a security. So your registered investment advisor, wealth managers, people with actual securities licenses can sell DST products. But I think that dynamic is pretty interesting. But they'll buy an asset. They will fund it with DST investor capital. And then in some cases, they'll do the management of that asset, but you have a fractional ownership of that asset. That's the point, right? And it's technically a security, but that security does qualify for a 1031 exchange. So it actually is considered real property. And so I think one of the big reasons why that there is so much growth in that market is it allows an investor that is sick of doing active real estate management, because if you own a real asset, there's real management involved, right?
For sure. Yeah.
It allows you to go from active management to passive investor through this DST product. So it's interesting from that perspective. I also think there are, the challenges of the product they're very expensive. Very, very expensive typically. And there's fees in there that you don't even know are impacting your investment, right? I mean, you have obviously the front load sort of broker fee for selling it. In some cases, you have a management fee for the security itself. You've got so you got these series of explicitly disclosed fees, but then you've got all these implicit fees, which are the acquisition fees of that asset, the disposition fees of that asset. In some cases, the sponsor is also the manager of the asset and extracting value as the management company. And you just don't know what that looks like, if that's a fair deal or not a fair deal. So, interesting product, interesting new structure, but, I think it fits a certain niche, but I don't think everyone is fully aware of the impact of what those fees do over time and what those fees actually are. So, but yeah, it's become a many, many, many billion-dollar market really quickly. And, I think it'll evolve over time as it gets distribution through, the Merrill Lynch's of the world, for example. I think that stuff will minimize and it'll become a more interesting product. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sounds interesting. I mean, does it make it a little bit more of a liquid product from a standpoint of being able to sell it before maybe the investment time frame has ended, or are there still similar sales periods like a syndication would be, like where you're saying, okay, it's going to be a 4 to 7 year hold or whatever, or do you have the ability, because it's in this trust, to be able to say, hey, I'm just selling my ownership, and there's a secondary market or a market for that, just that percent of ownership?
Yeah. So the typical hold is 7 years. Okay. So you have those similar syndication dynamics in terms of the hold period.
Okay.
The only liquidity would be if there was a secondary market, and there just really isn't an active secondary market. And if you are trying to sell in a secondary market, you are getting a massive haircut.
Yeah. Okay.
Probably don't want to sell. So, I mean, one of this thing I sort of knew in my head is, man, it'd be cool to create a fund that just buys DST secondaries that have been diligenced well. Because if you get them at 50 cents on the dollar or whatever it is, that might be pretty interesting.
Yeah, for sure. That's interesting. There's structures like this, and I've heard this just even recently, just trying to make something like that, an investment like that, that's a little bit more liquid, or that you could potentially borrow against, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, okay. Well, and so that's been part of your growth, right? So that particular, but you're doing 1031s in general, unless like any, obviously, maybe for the audience, and I think that a lot of folks know what a 1031 exchange is, but can you maybe explain the aspects of a 1031 exchange, kind of what the process is, what the benefits are, and why, it can be such a big business?
So for us, just to be clear, we don't sell any investment products, including DSTs, at all. Period. You're a real estate investor. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You want to sell your asset. You have one of two choices to make. Choice A, you can pay up to 40% of your gains in tax. Choice B, you do a 1031 exchange, right? And you can defer all 4 levels of tax, which we can get into what those are. Most people are surprised. Oh, I'm just going to pay federal capital gains. No, there's a lot more than that, and we'll get into that. But let's say you choose option B, the correct option, which is you want to defer all of that tax. Okay. Well, to do a 1031 exchange, you are required by rule to hire a firm called a qualified intermediary to facilitate that exchange for you. That is what my firm does. We are an exchange services business, and our role with our clients really is on 3 different levels. Number 1, we consult with clients to make sure that they know what they need to do to be successful with their exchange. Number 2, we produce the exchange documentation that will get them the tax benefit. Okay. And then the third and important thing is, during the exchange period, the other rule is you can't take constructive receipt of your funds. And so the qualified intermediary will hold on to your funds during that exchange period, which is the time between when you sell and when you're ready to purchase your replacement property. So those are the 3 roles that we play. We play a very narrow role in a much bigger real estate transaction. But that's it. It's a services business that isn't really thought too much about, but we are a required function in the exchange. And so we have, hundreds of partners all over the country, primarily brokers, but also CPAs, wealth advisors, escrow companies that trust us to service their clients and provide the best experience in the country.
Yeah. Okay. And let's maybe go back a little bit to the taxes. So, when you say 40%, of course, I'm thinking federal, capital gains tax of 15%, call it, and then, but you are also liable for potentially any depreciation, recapture, that kind of thing. So what other expenses could a potential investor be subject to if they just
you got the federal at 15 or 20%, right? And then you got state tax, and in Florida it's 0, but California's 13.3. Right?
Oh, there you go. Okay.
And then you've got this thing called net investment income tax, which some call Obamacare tax, but that's 3.8% if you make over a couple $100,000 a year. And then the one you mentioned, which is the one most people actually forget, is the depreciation recapture, right? And that's 25% of whatever you depreciated. So you blend it all up, and as a general rule of thumb, obviously everyone's different, but a general rule of thumb that we apply is think about 30% is a fair number to use to understand what your tax impact's going to be. But in certain states like New York and California, it's 40. So you just need to be mindful and eyes wide open about that. And the tricky part is you go in and sell your property today, okay, and you don't do an exchange, and then April comes, and that's when you get hit with the tax bill, and by then you maybe even have spent all of the money already.
Great.
And so it is this lack of awareness around exactly how much that bill is going to be that we try to tell people about so they understand. And then they can make the appropriate choice. Do I, just sell and pay the tax, or do I do the 1031 exchange? And, my personal view, it's a professional view too, is everyone that's a taxable person or entity in this country should at the very least explore their 1031 exchange. What do I mean by that? I mean, if you're selling an investment property, your default position should be, I need to go hire a qualified, I need to go hire 1031 specialists or a qualified intermediary, right? Let them hold on to my funds at close, so I maintain the optionality to defer my taxes. At least I'm giving it an effort and a try. And if you're a client of 1031 specialists, we charge you $1,195. We charge you $1,200 to do all of our work. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll give you that feedback if you decide to opt out of your exchange. So you literally haven't paid anything out of pocket, and you're given at least that first 45-day ID window to really understand if you want to do it or not. So even if it's a last minute decision, your default should be, let me hire the QI, let me have them, hold my funds, and then I'm going to figure this out. Okay. That's if you're, hopefully you know about this and you have planned ahead. We have some clients that, sell on Monday and buy on Wednesday, and they do that because they've planned ahead. But the most shocking thing for me, Keith, as an aside is, and where actually the biggest opportunity in the business is, today only 1 in 7 investment sales is 1031 in this country.
That is surprising. Yeah.
And I mean, let that number sink in. 1 in 7. 6 out of 7 are defaulting to paying the tax. Now, it's never going to be 100% because there's a lot of non-taxable entities like pension funds that own real estate in the country, but it should be closer to 1 in 2. And so this, through better education, through better messaging, my belief is that we can 3x the market size just by making people aware that this exists and how easy it is to actually execute. It sounds scary. 1031, it's part of the tax code. It is very simple. Hire a QI, hit 2 key deadlines, you'll have a successful exchange, you'll defer those taxes.
Yeah. Let's maybe talk a little bit about those deadlines and what needs to happen outside of, having the intermediary, like your company. So going in, if you have a property and you're going to sell it, and you are going to end up buying another investment property, what are some of the things that somebody needs to know going in? Obviously, they want to contact your company, Jon, but what are some of the other processes and steps that they need to take to assure that they are able to do this successfully?
So I think it's important to note that a 1031 exchange transaction at the front end happens just like any other real estate transaction, except for 2 little differences. Okay. Number 1 is you've got to hire a QI. So what does that mean? It means you're still going to have a realtor or broker involved. You're still going to have title and escrow. It's just that you need to also introduce the qualified intermediary as required. Okay. So, but everything happens just like normal. There's just an additional party at the table, so to speak. And then the other thing is, which the QI handles, is your funds don't go to you when you sell the property. So the QI will hold on to those funds for you, right? With the exception of hiring the QI, which just means signing an engagement letter electronically and signing a few more papers at the close, it's just It's the same amount of pain as any other real estate transaction, or you know what I mean? It's the same thing.
Yeah.
So the clock starts on your exchange the day that you transfer title to your relinquished property, the property that you're selling. Okay. And from that day, you've got, 45 days to identify what you want to buy next. What does that actually mean? Well, it means we're going to send you a form and you're going to fill it out with 3 property addresses that are your replacement property options. Okay. You don't have to buy all 3. You're going to list 3 of them. That is your ID period. And then you've got, from day 45, you've got an extra 135 days to successfully complete your exchange. And what does that mean? That means you must purchase one, or you could buy more, one or more of the properties that you identified. Importantly, you cannot go and buy something that is not on that ID form because it will not qualify for an exchange. But that is it. It's a 180-day total period split up between a 45-day ID period, which means fill out a form, and closing your replacement property by day 180. Okay? So you've got 6 months to complete your exchange. You've got a month and a half, assuming you start the day you sell, you've got a month and a half to figure out what you want to buy next. And those timelines are not a big deal at all. And they're especially not a big deal given that you've got all the time from when you even consider selling your place to the clock even starting. You've got all that time to plan ahead. For most people, they're saving hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax, or they're deferring it. Okay. And the way I think about the tax deferral is it is a 0 interest loan from the US government. And if you think about it that way, it has real value because every $100,000 of tax savings, and I don't know, whatever your borrowing rate is, it's at the minimum 5%. It's $5,000 per year for every $100,000 in perpetuity till the rest of your life if you want. So there is a massive amount of actual true value here. It's not just ephemeral value, it's real value. And the thing I also, say is, it's such a large amount of money for a lot of people, right? The tax hit is so big that it's way more than your salary each year. And so why not treat the diligence period, the planning period, as like a full-time job? Because the benefits are going to be greater than your salary. So treat it like a full-time job, and you're going to be successful doing this. I ask people that are really concerned. I am really never concerned about the timelines. It just takes some care and planning. But there are some people that, and I will just ask them one simple question. I'll say, okay, let's assume you live in a house and you're selling your house. It's your primary house. This is not a 1031 deal. But let's just assume you sell your house on Tuesday. Does that mean on Wednesday you're homeless?
No.
No, of course not. Because you've planned ahead. You know where you're living next. Even if it's your parents' basement, you know where you're living next. And the same is true for investment properties. That same idea is applicable, which is plan ahead, think about what you want to do next, understand the value of that tax deferral, and do it because it's so beneficial. So that's the kit and caboodle on the sort of exchange timeline in the process.
Yeah. And it's, just something that you have to be aware of. But like you said, most of the time, from a closing standpoint, if you've already identified it, it's not going to take you that long to close. The 135 days is plenty time to be able to do your due diligence and, do the loan paperwork if you have a loan that you're getting on it. Timeline wise, it's not a big deal. I had one where I did this, was attempting to do a 1031 exchange. I did do my 3 selections. I own one of those selections now, but at the time, unfortunately, they just weren't ready to sell. So it was an unsuccessful one for me, just because the timeline wise, the other 2 properties, the folks did not want to So I was just sort of throwing some out there. There's some off-market deals that I'd been working, and just for me, it just didn't happen to work the right way on the last one I attempted to do. And at the end of the day, I got my money back, so no big deal.
Well, that you're hitting on it, which is what are the consequences of failing a 1031 exchange?
Yeah,
There are not
nothing.
any. Like it's just as if you sold the place outright. There is no other impact, especially for our. I think we're unique. I don't think there's any other qualified intermediary that provides a money back guarantee like us. But with us, you get the $1,200 back. Okay, so it's not like you spend anything out of pocket. It's not like there's additional penalties to doing it. So I consider this like it's a free call option. It's free optionality for you to defer those taxes.
Yeah, for sure. So no, that's great. And the good news is, even on the next property, you can do it again, literally. So you buy another property, you can. I mean, this is kind of an unending thing if you wanted it to be. Ultimately, you can do the exact same process on the next one, and then roll those gains into the one after that. And so, you want to maybe describe that a little bit. I mean, but this is truly an investment strategy.
It should be the core of your investment strategy. I mean, make no mistake, a lot of real estate investment is done for the tax benefits, right? You get that. And this is one of those core tax benefits. But yes, some people will call it defer, die. Other people will call it drop and swap. Swap till you drop. Excuse me. But but that idea is really true, which is, there's no constraints around how many times you can 1031 in your lifetime. And actually, one of my posts on X went viral, and it was a simple table comparing, a starting equity of $100,000, 50% gains each time, and doing it 20 times. Okay, very few are going to 1031 20 times in their lifetime, but you can look at each number of times and what the difference is between paying 30% tax each time and deferring those taxes and what that means at the end. So there's true benefit to like the single transaction of saving that 30 or 40% tax, right? But if you do it 10 times, starting with 100,000 of equity, that turns into 150, that turns into 225, just like that. This is just your equity side. You're going to be in transaction number 10, you're going to be $3.75 million richer. It's the difference between $5.75 million and $2 million. And that difference is only paying the tax each time.
Yeah.
And if you do it 20 times, because of the magic of compounding, you are almost $300 million richer. Right? So it is an absolute no-brainer to do it one time, but if you're able to keep compounding, deferring those taxes and compounding your wealth tax-free, you are going to look back 10 years from now and say, man, look at all these chips I've stacked up because I decided to defer those taxes with a 1031 exchange. And so we call it the magic of compounding. And this idea of compounding is really core to like our beliefs as a firm. And compounding applies to relationships. It applies to your finances. It applies basically to anything in education and the things that you learn and the things that you practice each day. But yeah, compounding is really sort of this eighth wonder of the world, and more people should really understand the benefits of it.
Certainly. And like you mentioned, I mean, you mentioned this even, talking about the Delaware Trusts investment, just the fees and stuff can add up, right? The taxes can add up. So it's not always what you make, it's what you keep out of that transaction. And if you're able to continuously leverage the ability of that 1031 exchange and various other things to cut down, the taxes that you pay, your ability to build wealth just grows exponentially. So.
And these people think these are rules for the rich. It's just not true. I mean, the average, if you look at the data, the average equity in an exchange is like a few $100,000. So this is actually a stepping stone to a different class for many people, right?
Yeah.
Um, and of course, the very wealthy will utilize these tools when they sell. Why? Because why wouldn't you? But it is a great mischaracterization by, I think, many that want to change these rules, that this is just for the billionaire class. That is not at all what we see in our data. It's not what the industry sees in its data.
Yeah, I imagine. What so with 1031 specialists, you mentioned one key thing that, I can, just looking back at the last company I used, I definitely didn't get my money back for that initial, fee. So that's one separator. But you, what are some other things that you feel like you guys do kind of best of class amongst, compared to your peers?
Yeah. I think we're becoming very well known for, let me take a step back and let's recognize, if you're asking for differentiation in what is a commoditized industry that's been around for 100 years,
Yeah.
All of the differentiation is sort of on the margin, right? But in my competitive set, my industry peers, I think it would shock you how small this industry is. And this is the smallest niche in all of real estate. So there are 222 firms across the industry. Okay. 90% of them are 5 employees or less. That means there's 25 firms with more than 5 employees. There are only 10 other firms besides us with more than 10 employees. So you start to sort of look at the market structure. And this is what really attracted me early days to this specific area was, you've got a ton of 1 and 2 person shops. Nobody has the institutional background as Jeff and I do. Nobody has the ability to really think about this in the ways that it should be thought about. Like as one example, there are 4 big firms that control 80% of the market. Okay, and they are all subsidiaries of publicly traded companies, and they have been around for 40, 50 years. Okay. They don't spend a penny on marketing. They don't actually, beyond their sales team and their on the ground efforts, I've never heard a radio ad about 1031 exchanges. Have you?
No.
I've never seen a TV commercial, but this is the actual opportunity, which is educating, the mom and pop investor, educating the masses around this topic, how easy it is to execute, and why they should do it. And why that default option should be 1031, attempt, basically. That should be the default. But none of those 4 firms do that. They don't spend any money at all trying to grow awareness or trying to grow the market in the ways that you would expect from that regular consumers companies do all the time, right? So, what's funny is I see even the sort of top 10 firms, I see their presentations. I know how they talk about this. Even the ways they talk about it are confusing. This is it's an inch wide, mile deep domain. It does have nuance and complexity and depth, but for the vast majority of exchangers out there, this is really simple. And, their presentations start with math. They got math in the middle and they end with math. And I'm sitting here like, what? Of course there is no connection to the message or why, because it's so confusing what you're saying. I've done more math work than probably the entire industry combined in my career. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't talk about math at all to any of our clients. So, I mean, I can and I will, but that's not what is going to work in my opinion. And so you ask, how is 1031 specialist different? Well, we're the only firm in the last generation that has raised any institutional capital. So we are acquiring as the, sort of average 65-year-old qualified intermediary that's been doing this work for 40 years is ready to retire. We serve as an exit option for them. right?
Okay.
We're taking this, investor-led approach to, how we grow the business. And then there's all the organic stuff that we do to grow the firm. And that is around simplicity of messaging, like simplicity of pricing. People price 5 different ways and it's super confusing. I don't even know what they're charging. And really just the way that we talk about this, the way that the colors that we use, right? I mean, I'm Mr. 1031 here, right? Like this is all part of it. But at the core, the 3 things we do, which is consulting with clients, doing documentation, holding funds, you can't say you can add AI and, call it totally different. Like we use new technology and are built, we have the best 1031 AI brain in the country. And you can go to our website and boom, hit the bottom right and it's right there. You can ask it any question. It's going to nail it out of the park. Okay. So we use these new tools and new technology to lower the barrier of entry for people mostly. And I would just say like the one big differentiator from a practical perspective is you go to a lot of these firms that operate and you're going to get a deli counter experience. You're going to get a take a ticket, stand in line experience. Mm-hmm. And I think where most of my competitors miss is they don't understand what business we're in. Our business is a client service business. And there is no QI in the country that has executed a client happiness project with an outside consultant like we did. That looks at every single touch point we have with a client, say, how do we elevate this experience for them? How do we make it so that there's a moment during their brief period with us where they say to themselves, I'm really glad I chose 1031 specialists. And it's that care and focus on that area specifically that is a huge differentiator. I mean, I get calls every week. Hey, I'm in an exchange. Oh, okay, great. What's your name? What's your name, ma'am? Oh, it's Brandy Smith. I said, well, Brandy, you're not a client of ours, I don't think. Yeah, I'm not. I got my money somewhere else, but they're not answering my phone call. Can I just ask you these questions? And so, but that is not a unique experience. That is a very common experience with a bunch of people. And this is high dollar amounts. This is someone's most of their net worth. It is time sensitive. They don't want to wait for a call 3, 4, 5 days for a callback. And that's the experience most people have. And so when you commit to things like answering the call by the 3rd ring, when you commit to answering the phone on Saturday night at 8 p.m., you generate a very different relationship with your client.
Yeah, for sure. No, that it makes, I mean, even I had questions and, it is nice to get an answer right away when you have something like this, especially when you've got a large, like you said, it's a large amount of money. Not always huge, but I mean, it's going to be a decent amount of somebody's net worth that's going to be potentially tied up, and they're going to have answers, and they're going to have questions, and they're going to need answers. So that's fantastic. How about Jon? How about how can people find out more about you? How can they connect with you? If somebody's thinking about selling, somebody's potentially got something that is, under contract, they're going to be selling, but they intend to buy something else. How can they find out more about you and your company?
Yeah, I would just say most of the stuff we do is absolutely free. Okay. We do free like 95% of our day are spent doing free consultations to people just so and we don't sell. We just give them the parameters. We explain things simply so they know what they're doing. And that's it. We don't charge for any of our time. So we do charge when you close your sale. We charge you our $1,200 fee. But yeah, so in terms of lowering the bar and making this easy for people, it's super easy because it's free. Okay. But if you go to 1031specialists with an S at the end.com, that's my site. You'll see our phone number, which is 631-GET-1031, 631-438-1031. And just reach out. You can call us at any point. You can send us an email. I'm Jon at 1031specialists.com. And we're happy to help. I mean, that's really what we're here for. I'd say to my team, I said, this is the best business I've ever seen in the world, because we're in the business of delivering joy to people. And we don't have an unhappy client, right? Everyone is getting a massive benefit. We are providing this incredible experience and service that doesn't exist in our industry. And everyone at my firm is super happy. So yeah, it's a really cool thing to be doing day in, day out, because I just don't really have a bad day, you know? And I think that's different than my previous two experiences.
Yeah, it sounded like it. I mean, you said you hit all the marks with this new business, and that's rare and that's awesome. So, well, Jon, this has been really good. I've got two other questions for you that I ask every guest. One is just, any advice you would give somebody who's maybe just starting out in their investment journey?
Oh boy. I never answer the investor questions because that's all so deeply personal. I think the best advice I can give, and one I actually didn't take myself, is early on, just identify who the right advisors are for you. And I don't mean wealth advisors per se. I specifically mean a really good CPA that understands tax efficient planning and can help you think through. A lot of the CPAs I've used in the past do the look back. They'll do the taxes for the previous year. What you want to find is someone that looks forward and helps you think through what you're about to do and how to best minimize those taxes. People call 1031s a loophole. It's absolutely not a loophole. This is literally written in the tax code. It is a benefit to build the country. That's why this thing exists. It is incentivizing development in the country, and it's been around for 100 years. So why not? But your CPA should know what a 1031 exchange is. They should know what these new the cost seg studies and the bonus depreciation rules, they should be able to explain these things. And if early on you understand them, you're going to be in a far better position, 10, 20 years into your career.
Absolutely. No, I think that's great advice. And then how about a book recommendation? Doesn't have to be real estate related. It certainly can be, but just something you've read that's been impactful.
So I got this really wonderful hand-drawn book. I've got a 9-year-old son, and it's called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. And it is a wonderful story about a journey with these animals, and it's got the best life lessons explained very simply that even a 5-year-old can understand. So it's very touching. I would recommend that wholeheartedly, even to adults. I
have not had that recommendation. So it was The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Hole,
and the Horse,
and the Horse. Okay, all right. I'll have to check that one out myself. Well, Jon, this has been great. I really appreciate you coming on the Wealth Flow, and I think we'll call it a show.
Thanks, Keith.
Being that you're still here, I trust you found value in this episode. I personally wish I would have known these guests and strategies when I started my wealth creation journey. Go to wealthflow.capital to subscribe to our newsletter. And as a free gift, we will send you our quarterly market report and the top 10 things to look for in an investment opportunity. Take a minute to give our show a rating and review. Help us reach 1 million professionals by subscribing and sharing this episode with someone you know who could also find value in it.